You know, I hope I didn't give the impression that I'm opposed to abatements. I'm not. I just feel like, and I've seen some of the things that happened in the city, and it was very clear to me that the people negotiating the contract just got excited.
That I agree with.
But I'm not. I just think that a lot of municipalities jumped into something that they didn't understand.
Bonnie, you said we can't throw the baby with the bathwater out. I agree with you.
Did I say that?
Well, I mean, basically.
No, you did.
I'm saying, you didn't say that. I didn't say that because I'm interpreting it. You know, there were some good deals made here.
Yes, there were.
There were
Yes,
some problems.
yes,
There were some
yes,
good deals
yes.
made, too. And I can't help but wonder, political scientists here, whether this is another way of reducing taxes that in some settings would require legislation.
You know, you're getting into a whole other can of worms there. Look, yeah, it is a tax reduction, and the people who
So it's another backdoor way of saying we forget about this legislation business. Isn't that a problem?
Depends on who you're asking.
I'm asking you, Bob.
Okay, well, no, I don't necessarily see it as a problem. But if we were smart voters, we can vet these things when we're voting for the people who are ultimately going to be making these deals. And I suspect over the next,
we just changed
month
the
or
laws,
year,
didn't we?
Well, yeah. Well, yes, but I suspect over the next months and even the next year, we're going to be talking a lot about this as the Youngstown mayoral race comes into play, because those kinds of things are going to be an issue, because right now this community is on the cusp of something great. And if it's not handled properly, we can just, go over another metaphorical cliff, so to speak, and we won't be able to capitalize on what's about to happen.
You say legislation, but let me suggest to you that the legislators, the city councils, the county commissioners, they consider that when they enact these tax abatements, that it is legislation.
Yeah, really.
Oh yeah, and you can go and look at it.
But sometimes legislation on taxes has certain boundaries put around it, and they say, well, forget about those boundaries in this case.
So you're suggesting the whole system of
I don't
abatements
know.
is unconstitutional?
I'm asking a question here. I'm curious.
It's loaded again.
Yeah, it may be loaded, but I'm curious about it. I'm seriously curious.
Well, I don't know.
I think limited jurisdictions, the legislators in limited jurisdictions do have the authority to enter into these agreements within their jurisdictions. Now, I don't think there's any state legislation that says that can happen, but just based on the powers vested in the elected officials on the councils and the county commissioners, I think they would argue that they have introduced legislation. Now, have the people spoken on it? No.
So how come we have so many fights about reducing taxes in the various states and in the federal government? Reducing taxes is a big fuss.
Well, that's a philosophy.
Well,
That's not necessarily.
This is not a way of reducing taxes,
it's
isn't
not
it?
just a philosophy. There's also a lot of, some taxes are extraordinarily inefficient and very expensive to operate. Other taxes are very inexpensive to operate. The property tax, you lose 5 to 7% right off the top, simply because somebody has to physically go around the county and say, that house is worth this, that house is worth that, and so on. Very expensive. Other forms of taxation, like the sales tax, almost zero. So you have lots of advantages and efficiencies, and some taxes will destroy competition, other taxes encourage. One of the worst ones we had in this area was the personal property tax.
The more I think about this, the more I realize I got to learn a lot more about tax policy than I ever knew.
We'll leave that for another show.